part 5 and the final part. Thank you guys so much for being here with me on this journey and allowing me to tell my story. My name is Joe Adorno. I'm the first single gay man in the state of Florida to legally adopt a child out of foster care, and we're at part 5. As you can see, this journey's been interesting, to say the least. Sorry, I'm casual today. I'm here with my Rainbow Bright t-shirt. If you know, you know. But so anyway, the adoption was finalized, right? So it was finalized. It was finalized the Friday before he turned 18. And so now he's officially moved in. For those of you who don't know, when you adopt a child, that's the next most permanent thing you can do other than giving birth to a child yourself. So you have the court order that says you have officially adopted this child. And then they petition the state where the original birth certificate was issued. And a new birth certificate is issued with the child's new name, your name, and whatnot. So he was born in Puerto Rico. And so we've sent the court order, and Puerto Rico was like, no. And what do you mean no? What do you mean no? I legally adopted this child out of foster care. His last name now has my name attached to it, and I'm his father, and that needs to be on his birth certificate so we can get a new ID and we can get his new social security card and whatnot and get all his forms ready. Nope. Because Puerto Rico has a law, or at least did at the time, I don't know if they still do, that they will not allow you to legally adopt a child if you are less than 11 years older than the individual that you're adopting. Because I think biologically, they were like, well, if you're under 11 years old, you couldn't biologically be this person's parent. Well, it doesn't matter. This child was legally adopted in the state of Florida, and as long as you are 18 or older, you are a grown adult, and an 18-year-old can adopt a 16-year-old if they wanted to. Siblings do it sometimes. Very rarely, but it's possible. So Puerto Rico was like, no. And I was like, how do we fix this? And we went back to that attorney that helped with the adoption. And he was like, well, I could probably help you get it done, but it's going to cost more money. I'm like, I'm already paying you $5,000. Just to get this, isn't this part of the whole thing? He's like, no, obtaining a birth certificate is a very separate process. Okay. In the end, it ended up costing $10,000. And a current Florida, well, he's not current anymore, but at the time, he was a Florida senator, a surprising one. I'm not gonna say the name, currently in the new administration, but he helped. It took 5 years to have his birth certificate issued from Puerto Rico. And it was embarrassing, the whole process, because they were like, well, Joe, you need to come to Puerto Rico and testify. And not only do you need to testify, but I want you to testify with an affidavit where you were the day he was born, and I want witnesses to testify. But I don't know. What was it? Elementary school? Picking my nose somewhere? Probably playing kickball outside? I have no idea. You're asking me to get witness verification of where I was the day that he was born? I was a child. But in any case, it ended up happening, and it took 5 years, but it was embarrassing because even like we would go on a plane and we had a court order saying that I was his father, because I remember one time going to Universal Studios with him. We were gonna go see a movie at like 10:30 at night or something like that, and at City Walk, and the security was like, oh, I'm sorry, nobody under 18 is allowed to enter after like 10 o'clock. And I was like, we're going to see the movie. And he's like, sorry, no one under 18. And I was like, well, how come that family just went in with those kids? And he was like, well, that kid is part of the family. And so the parents are there. They're escorted with the parent. And I was like, oh, I'm his parent. And the security guard was like, funny. It's not funny. I'm his parent. I ended up causing a scene that the police showed up. And I was like, this is discrimination. I don't care what you believe, sir. It doesn't matter if you don't believe that I'm his father, but I am. And so the police came, and I ended up explaining to him how he was adopted, though it's nobody's business. And the judge and the circuit and the police was like, let this man in. This is his father. So we ended up going to the movies, but it's tough. It's tough when you show up at school. And I get it, but I wasn't understanding it at the time. And you go to parent-teacher conference, and since then, I've adopted 2 other sons. I have 3 sons total. And I remember like going to parent-teacher conferences, and I walk in, and they're like, what are you, his brother? And I'm like, sure. And then my youngest son, I remember he was wrestling in high school for a little bit. And I remember going to the matches, and I had some friends that obviously knew the adoption, but it was nobody's business. And they're like, oh, who are you here to see? And I'm like, oh, I'm here for, him. And they're like, what are you, his brother? I'm like, no, I'm his father. And luckily I had some friends that are like, no, that's his father, but it's nobody's business. And they're like, wow, you look too young. Well, teenage pregnancy is a horrible thing. it's just, I had to carry around my oldest son's court order with us almost everywhere I went to prove that I was his father and adopted him. And it felt like a receipt. And it sucked. I remember going to the airport with TSA and it just felt like a receipt. And I was like, when can this be finalized? And even I got the birth certificate of my youngest son before I got my oldest son's birth certificate. And it just was tough, but it was a good celebration when we finally did, and we got his birth certificate, and then we were able to get his social security card with his full name on it and a driver's license with his full name on it. And since then he has gone to culinary school and he's worked at some of the #1 restaurants here in Orlando, and has since moved on. But it was a struggle. And you know, after I did adopt him, working for that company, it made my life pretty difficult because now I could be fired, right? Because the adoption was complete. And so I walked on eggshells for about 6 months until I quit. And I took some time to myself. I had some money saved up. And I ended up meeting my second son. And then I started my company, YOLO Mentoring. And that's when I met my third son, probably 6 or 7 months later. And then he ended up moving in. I ended up adopting him like 6 and 7 months later after that. But so I have 3 sons, and this has been my journey. And it was tough. I remember when there was the 4 of us living in a 2-bedroom apartment for a while, and it was really rough. But anyway, that's all in the past. And so I'm here, and thank you so much for allowing me to share my story. Again, I'm Joe Adorno. I own YOLO Mentoring, and we are a social service agency working with kids and child welfare, and we're franchising. And though my adoption is part of my story, it doesn't represent everything of who I am. Remember, I'm still a father, I'm a friend, I have a master's in social work, I'm a business owner. I love life. But thank you. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, and stay tuned for more. Bye.